Hi creatives, it's Claire from Right Accounts, and in this video we're going to cover week 3 of preparing your business manuals, your operating manuals, or as I like to call them, your business blueprints, and specifically for finance sections. Now these documents really are there to help you, to help your business, to make things easier to remember, therefore quicker, and centralized as well, just so you can get on with being a business. Now, if you've been diligently following along in the last couple of weeks, you should have, hopefully, the beginnings of your finance blueprint that covers a list of the bookkeeping things you need to do and the beginnings of the instructions on how to do those things that always make you stumble when it comes to bookkeeping. And I will make sure the links to those videos are in the description for this video. But this week I wanted to remind you that bookkeeping isn't where finance starts and finishes. There are a lot of other aspects that I personally put under financial management, like cash flow management, asset management, including inventory and depreciation, accounts receivable management, which is basically chasing up unpaid bills, pricing and profitability, taxes, budgets, heaps and heaps of other things that you could think of as other aspects in your business but really have a financial impact on you. Now, I think each of these should have a section in your finance blueprint, even if that's just really a couple of notes, a few key assumptions, and a link to where you've dealt with this separately, maybe in a spreadsheet or maybe in another way. So I'm going to deal with just a few of these because I don't want to overwhelm you with information. That isn't ever my intention. So firstly, profitability and pricing. Now this section is going to look very, very different from a product-based business seller to a service-based business seller. So for a service business, really pricing should be fairly straightforward. It should be based on your financial goals and your availability of time or service, with a factor in there for expenses. So a business that wants to make $50,000 that has a limited amount of expenses may set pricing at a lower rate than a business that wants to make $50,000 but has a higher rate of expenses. But for a product-based business, this section is going to be really very detailed, or should be very detailed in my opinion. And when I say detailed, I don't necessarily mean complicated, but there are a number of factors we need to make sure we're going to capture and to calculate to determine an appropriate product pricing. Now, even if we just want to cross-check pricing to what we think the number should be, what the market is suggesting the number should be, if there's a big market for what you sell, or just at that predetermined retail number. So remember, there are a lot of things to cover. So firstly is the cost of producing the actual item. Then you also need to factor in the cost of using tools and equipments and consumables that are too small to allocate directly to an individual product. So if you sew, that would be things like a sewing machine, needles, and thread as well, because thread gets used up in sewing the item, but you're hardly going to be measuring the amount of thread you use to sew a dress or a skirt. So it's just a consumable, not allocated directly to a product, but does need to be included in the pricing of that product. Then we need to make sure we cover off things like retail markup, and we allocate enough for covering off our overheads of running the business. So things like the cost of having an ABN or a trading name. See, ABN's free. The cost of having a business trading name, the cost of having your website, the cost of if you use things like Later or Canva, those subscriptions, the cost of using your computer too. If you use your computer for business, there's depreciation of that, cost of having the lights on. All those things become part of your overhead, and that needs to be allocated into your product pricing. Then obviously you're going to need a profit markup because you can't just cover your costs. That's not going to be helpful. And your time as well. So there's a lot of factors coming into here. And also in here, you'll find there are a lot of assumptions that go into pricing. So things like how many sales are you splitting your overheads across? And can you actually make that many sales in a year? I think I'm going to sell 25 items a week at $100 or $50 or whatever the thing is, can you produce that many items? Can you sell that many items? Because if not, you're going to spread your overhead thinner than it actually should be. And then obviously we have other factors that are not necessarily part of pricing a product, but we need to be covering in making our kind of final sales or retail markup. So the cost of selling actually is a retail markup, the cost of advertising. So things like advertising on Facebook or Instagram, if you're doing boosted posts or just paid posts, selling on platforms where you pay a fee like Etsy or Made. Postage is also a cost of sales, and exhibiting at craft markets. So the rental of a market stall, the equipment that you might need, the fees you might pay for like a credit card processing should all be part of your retail markup, but we need to make sure that is being covered as well. So there's a huge amount of things that go into pricing, and then when you're in a product-based business, you also need to deal with inventory management. So your blueprint should include things like links to where you keep your stock keeping unit codes or SKUs, how you generate those codes, and how the formula for what you base those codes on, if you use a formula like I do, and also a regularly updated list of the stock you have, so both raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods as well. Now again, this doesn't have to be complicated or hard. So personally, for my jewellery business, I simply just have a notebook at the side of my production bench, and I add my creations as I make them just to a long list with the date against it using that stock keeping unit code. Then I can simply tally that information, and when I want to assess something or look at something, I can compare that to my stock and my sales, and it really shows me how busy I've been or how busy I haven't been, and can be either motivating or satisfying depending on how short or long the list is. Now there are, as I said, other things this blueprint for finance should cover. So there's cash management, and I will link to a longer video talking about cash management. So using a system like Profit First, either with the separate bank accounts or just running totals, can really give you that oversight of what's happening with your cash to make sure you have enough cash for your obligations. Then obviously I touched on taxes and budgets, which really do tie in with pricing and cash flow management, because your pricing should be set with reference to your revenue targets or your budgets and the expectations around sales and expenses in there, which also should generate a tax estimate, because if you're estimating how much income you've got coming in and how much expenses you've got going out, you should then be able to estimate your taxes. And I actually recently did a video on this exact subject, so I will link to that as well. Now, if you're overwhelmed by my huge list here and my huge list last week and my list the week before, my first advice is just make a start, even if that's just a document with the headings of the things you think you need to fill in. Then slowly just chip away one section at a time, because there's no deadline on this. It doesn't need to be done by the end of next week. It's a working document for you to reference and to develop as your business grows. And as things become easier for you, you may find you don't need to reference a document as much, but it is there for you when you have a brain explosion. Then my second piece of advice is to get someone to help you, like an expert, like someone who loves finance and systems. You get the hint. So helping business owners get their finances sorted is my favourite thing after planning, and believe me, those two things go perfectly together. So if you wanted to, get in touch and we can have a chat about my 1 month program, where we really do make significant progress on getting this business finance blueprint for you and your business set up and working for you. And you get access to my templates, because believe me, I have prepared enough of these in the past that your one will come together really quickly. You don't have to start from scratch. So just get in touch. My contact details are in the description for the video. So if you have enjoyed this video, enjoyed my advice, I would love you to leave me a comment or give me a thumbs up on the video. And if you want to see more content from me on all things creative business finance, I would encourage you to subscribe And if you want as well, there are obviously notifications from YouTube. And until next week, happy financing.